It is December 7th. Now remember, December 7th, 1941. Yeah, it's crazy to think how long ago that was, because even when I was a kid learning about Pearl Harbor, um, it didn't seem like it was really that long, before I was even alive. But 1941, 1985, I mean, 44 years had already passed by. Um, but it's crazy, being 83 years, since that tragedy took place. Um, it's you know, a lot of people don't think about it at the time. This is all opinion, speculation, whatever. Um, but you know, being alive during 9/11, for instance, we can all remember exactly where we were that day when that was all taking place and whatnot. And so I imagine, when Pearl Harbor got hit, communication wasn't what it is now. Television, the internet. I mean, even during 9/11, we had TV, we had the internet, radio, everything along that line. Uh, Interesting thing about Pearl Harbor is Hawaii was not a state yet. It was still just a annexed territory um, when that took place. But, it was unprovoked, completely caught off guard. There had been a few warnings ahead of time and everything along that line. But, I imagine, all the sailors, Marines, soldiers, non-military personnel, all in the area that died from that, and then the people that were there that survived it. There's quite a bit more that went on other than just, a few Japanese bombers flying over and taking out our destroyers. USS Utah, USS Nevada, USS Oklahoma, USS California, USS Arizona, of course. But and what's crazy to think about the destroyers, the Arizona was the only one that was never been able. They were never able to pump the water out, patch it up, bring it up to tow it, uh, and that just happens to be the one that had the most casualties and just a permanent tomb. If you look at that picture that I used for the thumbnail, I took that when my family and I were out there at Pearl Harbor back in 2022. So I mean that photograph's fairly new. There's still a little bit of oil coming out, after 80 plus years. Uh, Last night I spoke on my live how there was a sailor who his request was when he dies, if he could have his ashes dumped over where the Arizona's at, so he could be with all the sailors and people that he knew that died during his time while he was there in that attack and battle at Pearl Harbor. Uh, I thought that was really, I don't know, that to me is like, I almost get teary eyed thinking about that, because that is that bond of that brotherhood bond that a sailor had with his fellow sailors. Um, that's kind of like a special thing in a sense. I like that. I think that's a pretty cool request for somebody to have. I'm sure they had survivor's guilt. Survivor's guilt eats away at you. It's a tough PTSD to deal with. A lot of people go through. And I've had friends that had passed away, and you think about them. You think about man, what they'd be like, or how their kids and their wife would be doing better if they were around still and stuff like that. And so it's stuff like that. But at the same time, I'm glad that at the end of this person's life, they got to be returned to where they wanted to be at. And so Pearl Harbor, that's a pretty sad, special place. I remember my daughter and I, and we were on the ferry going across over to where the memorial is, because you take the ferry across to it, because it's right out in the middle of the bay there. And I remember just getting there and then just looking and seeing the Arizona somewhat sticking out of the water, the top of it, and how eerie, quiet, but at the same time is also kind of I don't know how to put it. It's like you could feel like you could hear the sailors who were trapped in that. Just imagining how bad that would be, um, taking on water in a ship. You're stuck in it, and then just watching that water level slowly go up. As you go to your death. It's not quick. Uh, I mean, whomever got killed in the bombs, in the blasts, in the fight, from the explosions and shrapnel and things like that, they got the quick, easy way out, as far as that. But the sailors that were stuck down there that just drowned, I mean, that's, to me, man, that would be one of the worst way to die. But, you know, it's, uh, it's a rough thing to think about. Uh, the silence and everything like that, when you get there. And like my daughter, she graduated kindergarten, so going into first grade, didn't quite grasp, the caliber of how big of an importance and big of a deal that Pearl Harbor is. I mean, it was the largest attack on U.S. territory. There'd been nothing like that had ever happened, in the short time period that we've been a country. Um, I mean, someday she will. It's funny, we were at a Christmas parade last night, and we're talking, and they always have like the state police, and they have the um, you know FBI. They all have their own floats here and everything like that. My daughter's talking about how she still wants to be a cop, and she's wanted to be a cop since 4 years old, and that's what she wants to do. She wants to be a canine cop. Um, and we were talking about the military and things like that. And, of course, she wants to be in the Navy before she becomes a cop, which, that's fine. Navy's not bad. But I don't know, when she gets older, maybe someday we'll go back to Pearl Harbor. But, that changed a lot of people's lives. World War II, um, you've got the Third Reich and you've got the Nazis and over in Europe and everything like that. And, we think of the Holocaust and all the horrors and things like that went on. World War II, I feel like a lot of the times, a lot of the focus, over in the Pacific Theater, just the brutality of that. Because I mean, one thing from what I've read and people I've talked to, and other older veterans or people alive during that time, grandparents and whatnot, it's the Pacific Theater was pretty brutal. You had the Marines who were out in the Pacific, a lot of them very young men, drafted or whatnot, not quite sure, never cut their teeth in a fight yet. But you're training to do that, and so you get the opportunity, you jump at it. A lot of people, I don't know, it's hard to explain it, but the Pacific Theater was pretty nasty. You watch Hollywood films or whatever, and some of them show some pretty realistic, crazy stuff. I mean, it's whether it be storming the beaches in Normandy, or you look at Iwo Jima and those places or whatnot. I mean, you're getting off those amphibious boats, those little crafts. You're on shore and you're running up a beach, and you've got guys in a nest with belt-fed machine guns shooting at you. Um, with some of the Marines back in World War II, they had flamethrowers, carrying those tanks. Now, here's the thing, from my understanding with those flamethrowers, they only really got about 5 good shots of those things, and then they were gone. So you're carrying this explosive tank with, incredibly flammable explosive gelatin in it, basically, with these flamethrowers. Um, Running up a hill. They're heavy, they're not light. You've got your naval corpsmen who, most of the stuff they're carrying, they have a rifle, but for the most part, they're carrying these big bags that have bottles of saline or whatever type of medical supplies and kits needed at the time. They were an easy target as well. You had your riflemen who, when you're on a beach, let's face it, guys, there's no cover on beaches. Beaches are called beaches for a reason. There's no vegetation, there's no cover. Um, you're going against an enemy who's already been on that land and knows the scale and everything along that line. And for them to hit that, it's I mean, I couldn't imagine it being in combat where basically all it is a shooting gallery for them as you're hopping off in the bloody Pacific. But they ended up taking it. Um, I get teary eyed when I see, it's funny, but when I think of the Marines lifting the flag, um, it's a proud thing. It's a very, very proud thing to see that every time, because it's like those guys were just a bunch of young guys uh, who fought for their country because somebody bombed their naval yard, and they're out there, they're doing this. A lot of them didn't have the type of training that the Marine Corps to this very day has. I mean, every man's a rifleman, and a lot of them got the fast forward. It was Camp Tarawa in Hawaii, which is actually closed down now. That's where they used to do a lot of the training for the Marines in the South Pacific. Um, it's actually right between a volcanic mountain, and I can't remember the other spot, but it's pretty interesting. That's where a lot of that training took place, because when they were fighting to get to the top of Pork Chop Hill or Mount Sabachi or whatnot against the Japanese. I mean, the U.S. was like, all right, you guys, this is kind of what the terrain's going to be like when we get there. You need to learn how to fight in it. Problem is, though, is to get to the terrain, the uphill battle, which fighting from downhill, and they have the high ground on the uphill. That's a challenge on its own right there. You've got these young guys who went and took it. I mean, they fought for pretty much 2 days straight, and were able to accomplish that. And there's a lot of pride in that. I wasn't alive during that time, but just to even think about that, just gives me so much pride to think of. I mean, and it's pretty amazing what Marines can do. Just the resilient, the training. They make the best of what they have. Don't necessarily have the greatest of budget for gear and equipment and whatnot, but they make do. And that's one of the things about the Marines that's it's a special thing that they do. But Pearl Harbor, of the ships that had been hit, they we think of the flyers, we think of the bombs, kamikaze type stuff and whatnot. Japanese also had mini submarines that were pretty damn close. The Japanese had other ships also approaching Pearl Harbor at the time that we took out that don't get mentioned. Here, one second, guys. I gotta my cat real quick. And I mean, so with the destroyers that got hit, so some interesting facts on that for people to think about. And this has always been something I didn't really even know about till I went there. See, when I went there, I thought it was complete just massacre, which it was. I mean, there was over 2,391 military personnel killed in that. If I can get this thing to load here, but of the ships, USS Oklahoma, USS Nevada, USS Utah, USS Arizona, USS California. All of them were able to get patched up except the Arizona and the Utah. And, they were able to be told over to the shipyard for repairs, taken apart and salvaged. Some of them actually went back into operation in the fleet, were actually used. Uh, but I thought that was interesting that they moved on, and they were still able to use those even after that case. But it's imagining that day. I mean, we had casualties. You had 4 battleships sunk, 4 battleships damaged, 1 X battleship sunk, 1 harbor tug sunk, 3 light cruisers, 3 destroyers, 3 other ships damaged, 188 aircraft destroyed, 159 aircraft damaged, 2,008 sailors, 109 Marines, 208 soldiers killed, 68 civilians killed, 2,403 in total. And then, you had 1,178 military and civilians wounded. So you look at that is a lot. That is huge. I mean, the cost on those ships is insane. But you have what the Japanese had lost in it: 4 midget submarines, 1 midget submarine, 29 aircraft, 74 aircraft, and 129 killed and 1 captured. Oh, 1 second. Okay. Is it important? Sorry, wife. But you look at the losses for that, and that is insane. It's 29 aircraft, 74 aircraft, 129 killed, 1 sailor. Civilian casualties: 68 killed, 35 wounded, and 3 aircrafts that were civilian aircrafts that got shot down. So I mean, that's something that you don't hear about too much. A lot of people don't, they don't follow up on a lot of history or things like that. There's all sorts of conventions and agreements internationally, treaties and things where, like the Hague Convention, for instance, you aren't allowed to use hollow point ammunition because of the Hague Convention in 1907. Japan bombing Pearl Harbor like that or whatnot was a huge violation of the Hague Convention as well. Now, to me, I think these conventions are stupid. I think these treaties are stupid because nobody ever follows them except the U.S. I mean, we get in trouble for all sorts of crap, and we're the only ones that follow it. So, it's like, where's the hypocrisies here, people? Something about, what was it? And this is a fun fact about it. You look at naval corpsmen. And why Marines don't have medics. And I didn't know about this until the other day. That's kind of funny. Where are we at here? Thank you for your patience bearing with me if people actually are watching this. Okay, so naval corpsmen. All right, pulling up here. Bear with me, but not just medics, doctors. Where are we at here? Well, I can't find it. There was a treaty, and there's and with the Marines there's an ethos, and that is every Marine's a rifleman, whether it be a cook, whether it be somebody in supply, whether it be somebody driving, whatever. There was at the time there was a treaty of medics are not supposed to be, toting rifles and things like that, which that's the biggest load of shit. But that goes against the Marines' ethos because everybody is a everybody's a rifleman. So, they'd use the Navy corpsman. Now, this might just be some old saying, fact thing, whatever. I was looking it up. I thought it was interesting though, but naval corpsmen, those guys go through a lot. Those guys go through a lot of training. Those guys know how to patch people up. They save lives. They're getting shot at while they're doing it. I mean, naval corpsmen, the utmost respect. Not to mention they hang around with a bunch of smelly testosterone Marines, and you know, good guys, just great guys, great guys. Lots of respect for them. But it's interesting facts like that. Uh, but with all this being said, today, being the day that it is, it's it's a tragic day. It's sad, but at the same time, it's also a memory of these people and people being brought together as a country. I wish it wouldn't take a tragedy for our country to be brought together. There's so much division. Politics have gotten ridiculous and crazy. There's so much so much hatred amongst each other that we're constantly fighting about, and it's sad. It truly is. But whether it be racial indifferences or religious aspects or anything along that line, it truly is. It's just sad. The nation, because I will say one thing: after 9/11 happened, people were a lot more united here in the U.S. It brought people together because it was a tragedy, and it's just too bad that it takes a tragedy to do something like that. But one thing in memory of these like tragedies that took place, if people were to unite without having to have these tragedies, I think that would be paying the ultimate respect and to the people that have been lost in both of those terrible instances. I mean. But anyways, guys, that's it for today. You guys all enjoy your Saturday. We will have Single Shot Sunday show tomorrow morning. You guys take care. Oh, that's what it was. I wanted to point one other thing out real quick here. So if you guys have ever seen the film Flags of Our Fathers, okay, and you guys have heard of The Lone Survivor with Mark Wahlberg, and that's based off of Afghanistan. Operation Red Wings with Marcus Luttrell, Danny Dietz, Michael Murphy, and what's the other one's name? I always forget. Anyways, Marcus Luttrell had came out on his podcast and had stated that the book for that was written, he didn't write it. He didn't know anything about it. Axel, there we go. Axel's the other guy's name. That he was out in Iraq, and somebody in his platoon was saying, hey, I read your book, all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. And Marcus is like, what book? I don't know. And then Marcus Luttrell saying, the Navy, they wrote this book. They had like lawyers, they had publicists for me and everything. And I just did what they told me to do. Okay. In that instance, the show Flags of Our Fathers, it's about a corpsman and two Marines. They're the ones that on Pork Chop Hill lifted the flag up. They weren't exactly the most truthful. The government was kind of doing it to promote war bonds and things like that, raise money using these three guys. And one of them had extreme guilt because he knew it wasn't true. And ended up drinking himself to death, over it. But it's a similar thing that goes on with war. You've got a lot of great guys that have, like Tim Kennedy, he still served. I'm not going to take away anything from him. He embellished in his book. His book must have got approved somehow. I don't know how. But in the book itself, committing war crimes. And I just thought, man, I don't know how they could possibly pass this off. But you have that. You have, with Marcus Luttrell, I'm not going to take anything away from him, but from according to what he said, seems like guilt's getting to him over that instant. It's the same thing, government. The government is the biggest business and the most successful business there is. truth, lies, or whatever the case is. Um, they will push and do whatever they have to. You know, and like I mean, they did it back in the 40s. I'm sure Vietnam. There's a lot of stories and things they probably did it with as well. I'll have to look into that more, but it's sad, sad that that happens because that creates a distrust between veterans and civilians and stuff like that, and that's a terrible thing. That's horrible. But anyways, that's something I thought about right before I got onto this because I was doing some just reading about South Pacific and the theater going on during World War II. The Marines were all involved in that. But anyways, guys, like I said, enjoy. You guys have a good weekend. Take care.